During this electoral season, sometimes it pays to get off of the stupid left-right political axis and look at a particular issue at a time on their own merits. And I want to look at one called voter ID laws. Now, to one side, it's dealing with the terrible problem of electoral cheating. We must pass laws to cut down on cheating. People pretending to be somebody else and voting. And they're not being asked for ID now, so that it happens. It happens a little tiny bit. And the other side legitimately answers that there's almost no examples of this problem. And meanwhile, the laws are going to interfere in the rights of not just poor people or the ill-educated or recent citizens or the young who often lack ID, but also, in some states, a terrible problem of many women who never really got redocumented with their husband's name, or divorced women who have to reevaluate. And some on the left are calling this part of the war on women. Well, I think with some justification, and yet we need to step back a second. One of the reasons why Republicans, more generally red staters, politicians, are getting away with voter ID laws and voter suppression is because there's an element of truth to what they say. And we accomplish nothing by ignoring that element of truth. The vote is important. It is reasonable over an extended period of time to ratchet up accountability and to ask that people be able to prove who they are. That reasonableness lets them pose these laws as being something that's called for, and that those who oppose it must have some agenda. If you don't want voters to show ID, it's because you want to cheat. This is how you get a reversal of those who are blatantly cheating, accusing others of cheating. It's important that we parse this out right. There is nothing intrinsically wrong with gradually ratcheting up the degree to which we apply accountability to potential failure modes in society. This is what my book, The Transparent Society, is all about. We apply accountability to each other. We have poll watchers to make sure there's no cheating. Is there a test that can nail down whether voter ID laws are, as their proponents say, merely ratcheting up accountability, or whether they are, as opponents of the laws say, blatant, flagrant attempts to cheat and steal votes away from poor people, minorities, young people, women? Is there a way to test? There is. According to the conservative think tanks, agendas, planks on their platforms, down the line, regulations that are onerously placed on business should be accompanied by assistance to those businesses to meet and comply with the new regulations. This is standard conservative dogma. And indeed, whenever new regulations are applied to business, very often, most of the time, there are allocations of money to help corporations and the rich to comply with the new regulations. It's called compliance assistance. And the fundamental test here is this. In any of the red states that have passed new voter ID laws, or other laws that restrict the access of poor people, young people, women, and so on, to exercise their franchise, were any funds appropriated and allocated for a compliance assistance. Were any new funds generated to say, here is an onerous new burden, it's not being applied to corporations and the rich, it's being applied to the poor. But we are going to show our hearts are in the right place and our intent is in the right place by allocating money to have a serious effort to go out into the communities and help the poor, minorities, recent immigrants, women, the young people, to get the ID they need in order to exercise their sovereign right of voting. Not just would this help them with voting, but it would help them to not be poor, because sometimes just the outreach to help them get ID and to get their credit ratings squared away and counselors to talk to about these things can help them get on the path towards helping themselves, which should be what conservatives are for. But instead, these efforts are sabotaged deliberately and relentlessly. Not one red cent has been allocated for compliance assistance in any of the red states that have passed these new voter ID laws. Not one red cent. And there you have it, you liberals. Do not make this a matter of goody-goody, because you'll be mocked. Do not make it a matter of denying a long-term need to ratchet up accountability and ID, because that doesn't make sense to people, and it makes it look like you're trying to cheat. Make it a matter of hypocrisy, of lying, of the clear-cut and decisive proof that these are attempts to steal elections, just like gerrymandering, which is being erased in one blue state after another, as the citizens of blue states rebel against gerrymandering and unfair districting, overcoming the objections of Democratic politicians. These rebellions have taken place in so many blue states, California especially, Washington, Oregon, and it's now taking place in New York. Not one red state has seen a rebellion of its citizens against the blatant theft and cheating called gerrymandering. And you'll see no rebellions against the blatant theft and cheating called voter ID laws. This is what you use. Use compliance assistance to expose the hypocrisy here. That's what makes the difference between people who are simply saying, we need to have more accountability in the voter rolls, and lying, hypocritical thieves. And make this clear to your uncles and your cousins. If, when they know about this, they are still supporters of these hypocritical, lying thieves, then the tar sticks to them as well.